Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloan, an aesthetic doctor with over 16 years experience in facial aesthetics.
And I'm David Siegel, an entrepreneur and business mentor with over 20 years of experience in our industry. Our podcasts are aimed at industry professionals, and any information or advice given is general in nature. You should consult with a healthcare provider before undergoing any treatment.
You can also subscribe to us on Patreon for on-demand content for injectable and business education. So guys, welcome to chapter, I think it's 19 of the Injector Diaries. How are you going, David?
I'm good, buddy. The second episode for today we've recorded. So
You must be fed up with me already.
So the first one was today we were talking with a UK injector that now lives in Australia, talking about her business. So that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Getting into the financial side of things, difficult time of year in January and what's going on in her business. Now we're talking about Injector Diaries. So someone's story, how they got into the industry, what's going on in the area. Our guest today is from United States in Texas.
Yeah.
So down south where there's lots of interesting things happening over there at the moment. But before we dive into that, do we want to talk about our Patreon a little bit and what's happening this week?
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into April's Patreon as well. So a bit of a Patreon collaboration. But if you haven't heard of Patreon, it's our way of offering online or I guess on-demand education, and I do the injectable stuff. David does the business stuff. It's grown really well. We've got nearly 300 subscribers now. We're producing content every week, and there's just something for everyone. And the feedback we continually get from our subscribers is that we're sort of giving support that isn't really available elsewhere through pharma or a course or something. And then the other big part of it is the collegiate networking. It's through our various WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, so we've got groups set up for different areas within, I guess, you want to call it a specialty? I'm calling it a specialty. So business, regenerative medicine, injectables, country-specific discussions. And we've got people involved in these WhatsApp chat groups who just started injecting last week, and then people that are international KOLs and people with different experiences and areas of expertise, and everyone's like really willing to share and support each other, which is what we're all about. So if you're interested in that, you can go and try a 7-day free trial. If it's your jam, great, we'd love to have you. If not, no hard feelings.
Exactly. Now let's talk about our friend who's on the other end of the line all the way from Houston. How are you, April?
I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure to meet you properly. We were just saying off air that you and I were speaking years ago, probably even pre-COVID, on Instagram. And then,
for sure,
like you said, the algorithm tends to separate people and silo us. So haven't connected in a while, but it's really nice to talk to you. How are things in Texas? What's going on? You've just come back from Christmas, presumably. So how's it all going in 2024?
Yes. I don't know if it's the same there, but the end of the year is always the busiest, and people want to get in before parties and events and family get-togethers and can you work me in? And so December is always really busy, and January tends to slow down a little bit and then pick up a little bit more, although I've heard rumors that it's the first quarter is going to be slow for aesthetics. So we'll see. We've got to get creative, but kind of nice to enjoy the break a little bit because we rarely get that, but it's hard to not feel guilty about being slower.
Well, we were always under the impression that the Americans never get a day off. Like whenever we speak to our peers in our Patreon community, they're like, what? You guys get this holiday and that holiday? And I can't believe you're taking 3 weeks off for Christmas. It seems to be that you're chained to the desk. So what's the reality?
Yeah, it's stupid, isn't it? Well, in this industry, my take on it is we're not saving lives. So I don't need to work 40, 50 hours a week. I could if I wanted to. I don't feel like I would be the best person, the best injector if I was just slogging away, churning out one after another. After the end of a 6-7 hour day, I'm kind of mentally spent.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%, I know.
Yeah, you're changing your treatment plan for each individual person. You're asking them about their lives and getting updates on what's going on with their family. And I love that. I really, truly enjoy it. But after several hours of it, I'm kind of at the, I'm full. My brain's full. So I've got to cut it off.
Yeah.
But, I mean, maybe in the beginning for people who are getting started, they do want to work those longer hours and really, get the experience faster. But I think a lot of injectors that I know only work for 3 days a week.
Yeah.
Not the 5 or 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, corporate America here is ridiculous. It's 50, 60 hours a week, and no shame. That's just what they expect.
Yeah.
And the reward is you get to keep your job. It's really pathetic.
Yeah, there's something up with that equation, I think. So let's start at the beginning. So you're an injector in Houston, Texas. You're a physician assistant, so you're a little bit different from some of the regular nurses. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you've gone and done sort of, I guess, areas of specialist training. So just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into the industry. What do you do with yourself when you're not at work? Do you have a family? What hobbies do you have? Just give us the flavor of April. Tell us all about yourself.
Yeah. So, wow, this could go on for a while.
Yeah, we got time.
It all started.
We've got an hour and 25 left-ish.
Yeah. Okay, so I started at I graduated PA school. So PAs, you've probably heard this before. We have a master's degree in medicine. So we are trained to practice medicine. We diagnose, we treat, we prescribe. Our training is more condensed and shorter, and we don't have to do residency afterwards. So I was the one in class who loved skin, always had an affinity for rashes and skin cancers, and just, really lit my fire. I just thought that was the coolest thing ever and really enjoyed it. But for some reason I was thinking, I'm going to go into plastics. I really like plastic surgery. So I structured all of my electives, all of the optional rotations I could do geared more towards surgery. And the final rotation was like a 3-month preceptorship, and I arranged it in plastic surgery. And at the end of it, I said, I don't want to do plastic surgery. It's a lot of early hours and standing on your feet. And as a PA, we're not doing the surgery. We are assisting in the surgery, and we're doing the pre-op and the post-op and the follow-up and the rounding. And, that just wasn't as exciting as I was thinking it would be, which is, the whole reason we're doing a preceptorship, right? To figure out if that's really what you want to do. So, after that, I graduated, and I'm like, well, I got to get a job. So I happened to be at my allergist on a, annual checkup, and they happen to be hiring. I'm like, yeah, sure. Nothing else is around right now. It wasn't really what I wanted to do, but it was good for them. So in the meantime, I was looking for a derm job. I wanted to work in dermatology because I went back to the original, the skin and the rashes and all of that. And a colleague of mine told me about a position open at a hospital. It's called MD Anderson Cancer Center. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's like one of the biggest cancer centers in the world, and certainly in the United States. And their dermatology department was hiring a PA. And so I just reached out to the head of the department. We talked, and I got hired. And so I spent the next 3.5 years there. And obviously it's a cancer center, so we're seeing a lot of skin cancer, melanoma, but I also worked closely with a physician who specialized in cutaneous T-cell lymphoma, which is a really rare skin lymphoma that's horrible in the later stages, and saw a lot of that, a lot of graft versus host disease, cutaneous reactions to chemotherapy, skin cancers and excisions and all of that. And just worked right alongside the residents and basically functioned as a permanent resident in the clinic. So I would work up the patient and present the patient, and we would go in and with the attending and formulate a plan of care, and then that would execute it. I would do that, or the residents would. So I was there for 3.5 years, and it was a great training ground. It's really hard when your patients are so sick, and, mentally and emotionally, it's draining. And although I loved the patients, after a while, I'm like, I don't think I can do this for the rest of my career. I really, really wanted to get into private practice where things are more manageable and controlled, and you don't have all the bureaucratic bureaucratic red tape of a large institution. So did some networking, ran into a dermatologist who had the largest cosmetic derm practice in Houston. And we started talking, and that all worked out. And that was in 2005. And I joined her practice then, and it just grew and grew and grew. And the whole reason she wanted to bring a PA on was that she was so busy with her practice that she wanted to train somebody so that I could see her patients as well. And so I really did like a fellowship with her of sorts. I would just work closely beside her for 4, 5, 6 months and learn exactly how she did her procedures and her lasers and her injectables, and just kind of learn from there. So, back in 2005, here in the United States, we had collagen and we had Botox. And we had lasers, of course. We had IPL, big dinosaur machines. They were like as big as a door. And it was just huge and so powerful. But, the technology has gotten so much better now. But so I got in at a time, this was good and bad, where we really didn't know very much. We were filling nasolabial folds and lips. And then as the specialty grew, I was able to grow along with it and learn as new things come along, and just kind of pick up from there. So, made lots of mistakes and did some dissolving, and, the same way we all grow. So that was 2005. I was there until March of last year when I started my own practice. And it's been, almost a year now. So it's been really good. I feel like a lot of my patients have followed me, and I just get to structure things the way I want and just do it the way I want to.
That's a good summary. I'd love to know more about Houston and Texas, and so we can sort of, I guess hone the story to, what do people want and so on. So what's it like? What are people asking for? What's the kind of dynamic and the market?
Yeah. Well, it's a huge metropolitan city. So it's the 4th largest city in the United States. And it's so expansive. Like the city proper would probably take you an hour to drive from one side to another on the freeway. And then there's the suburbs on the outskirts where a lot of people will live and then drive into town for work. But it is a huge city, just like all cities, and there's all different types of people, and there's really wealthy and the not so wealthy and everything in between. And, each kind of area has its own flavor. But, in this area in particular, there's a lot of towns in Texas that are like this. Dallas is, very much into, there's a lot of big market for aesthetics there as well. And San Antonio and even Austin, all these, bigger towns around the state. But I've never had a shortage of people who are interested in having things done. And it definitely, having the name behind the practice I was at before, because it was so well established. And then when I started social media, you put out there what you produce and people are attracted to that. And then they find you from there. So it's just constant, stream of people who are interested in aesthetic procedures. I like to think that I produce more natural results, not so over the top. And the people who appreciate that are the ones that will reach out to me for procedures.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've always found America, I've been there many times and been to different parts of the country. And one thing that blows me away all the time is just the vast differences climactically, from a geography perspective, cultures, different thoughts about life, politics. Like it's such a melting pot of, it's like 50 countries. I guess that's what they call it, the United States of America. You've got like 50 different countries that are all unified under a single banner. So I'm interested with that in mind, like what is the aesthetic difference? And I guess I'm asking you to generalize because I know there's going to be different pockets of people within even the same suburb. But if you were to compare, say, Houston, Texas to, say, Miami, Florida, or New York or California or Oregon, how would you describe the aesthetic trends that happen in Houston?
Not as extreme.
Right.
More conservative.
Yeah.
You know, that we're in the South, which to us that means more conservative and not so over the top. Miami, I think, BBLs, and California, I think big lips, and, here people like, oh no, I don't want that. And, honestly, I have to talk most of my patients into lip filler.
Mm-hmm.
They're scared shitless of doing lip filler. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you these big lips. Oh, but if you put anything, no. One syringe is not going to make you look like Angelina Jolie. It's just so much, educating and hand holding. And then they do it and they're like, I should have done this a long time ago. I love it. I absolutely love it. But they've seen the terrible results. They've seen their friends or, somebody on the street with these terrible results. And they're so scared of looking like that. They want to look natural. They want to look understated. They don't want to look like they've had work done.
Yeah. And then you've got Dolly Parton, who's from the South.
Well, I was going to say, like, my stereotype of a female from down south is quite glamorous. It's quite feminine, big hair, quite well dressed, but that's
Dallas.
Oh, right, that's Dallas.
Right.
But also the cowboy culture as well. Is the cowboy culture a thing? Is that like a generic theme running through the state or not really?
Maybe in some of the smaller towns, you definitely don't see people, with cowboy hats around here. Okay. Sometimes boots around the rodeo. Nobody rides horses.
Yeah. It's like when people...
It's not like that. But there are lots of people who have ranches.
Yeah.
And on the weekends, they'll go to their ranch, and then they are...
Yeah,
there you go.
They kind of turn into cowboys at the weekend.
Well, it's like people who think Australia, we've got kangaroos like hopping down our streets, and some places in Australia there is. So, what do you do with yourself outside of work? We're going to talk about your career and your aesthetic, ideas on things. But you got a family, kids. Like, what do you do when you're not injecting people?
Yeah. And that's my life right now is my kids. And honestly, I've structured my career and my schedule in such a way that my other job is mom. My first job is mom. I'm married. I've been married for 22 years now, 23 years, lose track after a while. Great guy. He's just super solid, and he's in healthcare too, but more administration. And then we have 3 kids. I have an 18-year-old daughter who's a freshman in college now. And then I have 15-year-old twins, all girls. So all girls, and they are just amazing and fun, and I adore them, and I want to be there with them. I mean, these years go so fast, and I don't want to turn around and say, damn, I wish I would have spent more time with them. This is it. That's all I got. So, I mean, like before this, I was picking one up from school and take her to tutoring, the other one to the gym, and then picking them back up again and taking them back to the house. And, it's so that car time that we get to really talk and spend time together. And so that's usually what after school or after work and weekends are, just spending time with them.
Yeah. It's a common question that I get a lot. I'm sure Jake gets the same sort of questions. How do you balance that? And especially mums who've got busy practices in this space, they always feel conflicted between working on their business and taking care of things at home and balance. Because almost like having your own business is like having a kid. It never stops screaming. It always wants something from you. Shit happens that you don't expect to happen at really inappropriate, inconvenient times. So how do you as a mum and someone that's a successful injector and PA, how do you balance that? How do you sort of prioritize what gets your time and love and attention?
Well, I have an amazing husband and partner who is so, so helpful I literally couldn't do this without him. And he has a bit more of a flexible schedule. Ever since COVID, he's been working from home, which is a mixed blessing. Sometimes it's good, but then you feel like you're in prison all day. I totally get that. But, so if God forbid somebody gets sick, he can go pick them up from school. I could if I needed to, but then it takes some creative rearranging with, the patient's schedule. So he's helpful in that way. But then also I've structured my schedule. So I'm done working at 3:00 and then I go pick them up from school. So the only time I work is when they're in school. And then that gives me the freedom to, still be with them before and after. And then I work 4 days a week. So, Mondays are my day to get all the things done, run all the errands, all the things I can't do when, they're in school or I'm working. So, that's just kind of how I've structured it lately, or actually for a long time. But it really started back when my twins were little, and they were about to start kindergarten, and we had a nanny who had helped us at the house while they were little. And, I said, I don't want them to start school and then I'm only going to see them a couple hours a day. And, I don't want my whole career to be so sucked up in this, because although I loved it, I knew it was more important to me, and that was spending more time with them. So at that point, I started reducing my hours, and I was already 4 days a week, but then I started reducing my hours where I'd only work while they were in school. And I've just kept it that way ever since. Even when I started my own practice, I just kept the same hours, and it's worked for us. Now, when my oldest daughter was, back home and she was driving, she was also the third person who could help me out too. Now it's back on me again until the other ones start driving. But it's all the network of help and, friends and husbands and, kids who can also drive.
Yeah.
But it just seems to work.
Well, it sounds like you've got a good balance, April. Well done. So you mentioned you did almost like a fellowship in your old place, and then you were there for a long time. So did you have any other mentors or role models, or who's been your biggest inspiration as an injector or a trainer, I guess?
So it's funny because I am not a trainer. I have thought about it, and I've talked to some of the bigger names about becoming a trainer. But when it comes right down to it, I don't feel like I'm a teacher. I started this Patreon thing relatively recently, only in the past few months. But I just really, really enjoy my time with my patients. And I like dedicating that time to them. And I would feel so splintered if I had to go fly somewhere or go train some people in different places. To me, that would feel kind of scattered. Maybe that'll change later. But so I haven't really gotten into training. I would say for mentors or people that I look up to, there's so many great ones. Probably the one who just blew my mind and literally completely changed the way I practice was Arthur Swift. I saw him and Kent Remington, a Canadian dermatologist, back in 2016 before he was doing Swift Beauty, and it was called Aesthetic Blueprint. And he presented data that just opened my eyes into how we're aging. He had the Roaric and Pessa, the fat pads, and how we're the descent and ligaments and bony changes and the phi ratios. And I was just riveted the whole weekend, and it completely changed the way I practiced, and it completely changed my aesthetic outcomes and my thinking. And it just triggered this desire to learn more and more and more and more, because I don't feel like I'm competing with anybody else. I just want to be the best I can be. And so, I look at my work and think, well, how can I make that better? And I try not to look at other people's work because I'm not them. I need to be happy with me and, just continue to improve. So, for sure, Arthur Swift by far, he's been so instrumental, and just how he continues to teach us and share his knowledge is just so thankful for him.
Yeah. If you're a listener and you've never heard of Arthur Swift, he's like the granddaddy of injecting as far as I'm concerned. And he was on our 200th episode. Listen to that one if you've never come across him.
You mentioned that when you started in the industry, and I guess we're all in the same kind of era. Like, even though I'm not an injector, I was involved in the industry and the space in that time. And I remember the collagen days, the overfilled nasolabial folds, the lips. No one knew what a vascular occlusion was. And it was all, it was the Wild West. And so
it was literally, yeah.
So my question to you is, knowing what you know now, how would you design your training if you could go back and say, this is how I would educate April, knowing what you know now?
Oh, knowing what I know now back in 2005.
Yeah, if you had to design your own training protocols and how you would roll. Yeah.
It would be really, really helpful to have cadaver courses then, or at least observe in facelift surgeries and be able to see beneath the surface. I mean, I remember even injecting then thinking, God, it'd be so helpful if we knew what we were injecting into. I know there's blood vessels in there somewhere, we're going to cause a problem. And yeah, just having that literal physical under the surface where you can see, where's my needle possibly going to go? And now we have ultrasound too. It's just, amazing. But for sure, cadaver courses would be very helpful. Filler, rheology, when Restylane first came out, and then all the other ones after that, just kind of learning more about that. I think back then it was more, here's a product, here's your paintbrush, and this is where you stick it. We're just going to, do the nasolabial folds, and oh yeah, the shadow's better. But, what about the mid-face descent and the jowls and, all the other areas where they're lacking? And we just didn't know. We didn't understand then. So I think having that knowledge of why we're seeing what we're seeing helps us to tailor our treatments to be better for that person.
Yeah. So
I was going to build on David's question because I know what he was getting at. So let's say you had a junior injector in your clinic. Maybe you do. I don't know. We'll get onto that. How long do you think it would take to train them up in whatever way you see fit to be competent? Like, what does that training pathway actually look like? What does that trainee need to do for you to let them go into the world and be safe?
I would start with something simple, Botox or toxin, where, even though it is somewhat straightforward, there's a lot of art to that isn't really picked up until you're competent and confident in doing the basics. And then you start to learn other ways to inject and reconstitute and, deep injections, superficial injections. There's just, such an art to it. And then graduate on to maybe mid-face, maybe lips, maybe add chin. But, probably a lot of observation and watching first and seeing how I or somebody, a trainer, does it, and then graduating to one-on-one and getting really comfortable and competent in that. And, making sure there's no cowboys, because there's, you can get that Dunning-Kruger curve. You can really cause some problem if you're feeling super confident, but you just don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, I see it as a specialty, even though it's not, and I'm not sure exactly how you classify things where you are, but here in Australia, it doesn't have a formal training pathway. It's just sort of like this hybrid of different disciplines that have kind of merged into one, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own and accelerated at this amazing pace. And so we've got so many injectors in our country now, and there's no formal training pathway. So people can go and do like a weekend course or a day course, or if they're lucky, maybe it'll go for a few weeks or a couple of months. And people sort of walk into these practices and they're kind of gone, okay, on your way. And people are sort of, as you said, they're attempting things that potentially beyond their capacity to understand. The anatomical knowledge but potentially isn't there at all. And I agree with you on the toxin. I know you listen to our episodes and maybe you've heard me say this before, but the idea of like not letting someone go outside of toxin for a year, I think is a really sensible decision. And as you said, it's complex. You've got so many different patient faces that you could come into contact with, and knowing how you're actually going to do the best by that patient in terms of their age, their ethnicity, their facial shape, their features that make them unique and beautiful in their own way. lower face, off-label. I mean, it seems like we're just turbocharging people through this extremely complex discipline that's everyone's still trying to catch up with. So I agree with what you're saying. And so what do you think like a sort of a time frame would look like to sort of master tox, if we can use that term? Would you say like a year? Is it more than that? I mean, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, I still feel like I'm learning.
Yeah.
It's, my 19th year. But yeah, I mean, I would say at least a year of full-time-ish injecting, where you get to see a variety of different patients in all ages and anatomic variations and, desires and just get really comfortable at treating them and see them back in follow-up too. I think that's super important, especially in the beginning, because you send them off and you're like, well, I hope it's good. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And then you have some patients who are like, oh yeah, it was great. And, you happen to see a picture and, an eyebrows all wonky and, because people don't look at themselves and, smile and talk. So they're not really seeing it unless somebody else points it out to them. So yeah, I mean, I think seeing them in follow-up is so important in the beginning, or if you're trying a new area or trying something new, so you can see, well, what does this look like? Do we need to tweak it or customize it some more?
And do you have any tips for getting people to come back for reviews? Because I know a lot of people say, oh, the patient doesn't want to come back. I'll just assume if I don't hear from them, everything's okay. And then you sort of lose that opportunity to sort of reflect. The patient might think it's great, but you might go, oh, you know what? I could have done that better, or I'm glad they're happy, but I'm not real happy with that, and this is what I'm going to learn for next time. So how do you sort of get your patients to understand how important it is that they return, even if they're seemingly happy with the result? You want to get them in front of you again so you can continue to hone your craft.
Yeah. I just, I have a lot of patients who will thankfully just do whatever I want. And I'm so thankful. They'll be like, whatever you think, April, whatever you think. And if I say, I'm tweaking something a little bit here, I'd really like to see it once it's fully effective. Would you mind coming back in 2 to 3 weeks? And I just want to be sure I'm getting this right for you. And if we need to adjust it at that point, we can do it right then. And, then we'll have that roadmap for going forward. And they just really appreciate that and respect that I want the best for them. And, they're always going to have a patient who's like, it's really hard to get back up here. I live too far. I can't make it. And then, that's fine. Sometimes I'll even have them text me a picture or, send a little video or something so I can see what it looks like in action and, make a little note in their chart. But, most of my patients they're along for the ride. They realize this is a partnership and they want to get the best results and they want to help me get the best results for them. So we're going to work it together.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly how I do it. I sort of rightly make it all about them. It's not about me. I want to make sure that your face is looking as good as possible. And if I can make it even better, then let's do it. Right. So I think that's a good tactic.
Yeah.
Who are your typical patients? Like, what's your stereotype? What's your age group? What are the common things that you're doing day to day in your clinic?
I, at this stage, do mostly kind of full face harmonization, full face balancing, whatever you want to call it. I don't really treat just single areas any longer, just lips or tear trough or, an isolated area. And it takes a lot of educating. People are like, but I just need this done. And you're like, well, we need to make sure everything else is in balance or else, your eye is going to be drawn to the area that's out of balance. And so most of my patients are, temples, cheeks, tear troughs, lips, jawline. Our filler here, I don't know what the pricing is there, but the filler is really expensive and the tox is expensive too. And so people wind up doing treatments in stages just because it would be, financially a lot to do it all in one. So when I have a new patient and I'm starting them on a whole treatment plan, we'll wind up doing 2 to 3 different sessions, typically about 1 a month. If they're younger, maybe in their 30s, early 40s, we could probably do it in 2 sessions if they're filler naive. If it's somebody in their 50s or 60s, then we might be doing 3 or 4. And then we start lasers and, that whole process. So I'm seeing them quite a bit in the first year or so. But I mean, all different ethnicities, primarily Caucasian, but I have quite a few Latin, Hispanic patients, African American, Asian. I mean, I enjoy seeing everyone, and I see some men too, but definitely women are my largest patient population.
How do you approach your consultation? Because that's something that doesn't really get taught very well in most instances, and everyone's focusing on how do you apply this technique, or what product should you use there, or this is this area of the face from an anatomical perspective. But in terms of going through that process of building rapport, getting them to understand who you are, what your philosophies are as an injector, going through the treatment planning, can you just walk us through that a little bit? Because I think that people would really benefit from hearing what works for you. Obviously, greatly experienced, and I'm sure you've got some gems to share with us.
So I'm doing it a little bit differently now than I was 5 years ago. What I do now for a consultation is I do a pre-assessment. So if the patient is interested in having treatment with me, my assistant sends them instructions. They will send us photos of them in different angles and expression photos. I analyze those photos and I make my treatment recommendations based on that for filler, for tox, for skincare, for lasers, and surgery, if that's something that they need. So I send them back this pretty extensive treatment plan with pricing, everything. They will get all of my consent forms. They understand what the pre, what the post is like, what the downtime is like. They know the pricing. They know everything. So by the time they come in to see me, they're ready to go. Now, I will still sit and talk with them and get to know them, recheck my recommendations just to make sure I still agree with, my recommendations on a 2D image now that they're 3D in front of me, and just make sure I'm still in agreement with myself. But that's how I've been doing it for the past couple of years. And it's worked really well. The reason I started changing it was I would get a lot of people in for a consult, and they would be like, well, we can't do the treatment right now, and my schedule's booked out for weeks. But if we'd already planned for it, we'd have the time, we could do it right then. So that was part of my thinking. The other is, sometimes they're not a good candidate for one reason or another. And I wouldn't want to block all that time on my schedule and then get them in front of me and they're like, oh, well, you're on blood thinners, you actually can't do it. Or, oh, you actually have tear trough filler that needs to be dissolved, so we can't do anything today anyway other than dissolving. And then they're disappointed. And, a lot of that could be mitigated from the beginning had I just been able to lay eyes on them, get their history, and understand what their desires are, and formulate the plan from there. But I find that with social media, you put out there what you produce, and then that in turn attracts the patients who desire those results. And so I noticed that when I started Instagram, I'm sure Jake, you noticed the same thing, that your patients would come in and they're like, oh, yeah. I saw your post the other day and I totally understand why you're recommending earlobe filler or whatever it could be. They come pre-educated. They're already on the same page. They already understand why you're doing what you're doing, how, somewhat, and somewhat about how much it's going to cost, but not totally there. But, they get some idea of, what I can do for them. And they're not going to come to me if they want the big, huge lips. I'm not your girl. But that's, reassuring to them. So it's kind of this two-way street. Like they already know, they vetted me beforehand. And so they kind of know what I'm going to say. It's always a little sticker shock when the treatment plan comes in, because everything is so expensive. But, that's also why we just break it up. So it's just a little bit easier. People like that more conservative approach. And I feel like the outcome looks even better once it's done gradually in stages rather than injecting 9-10 mils all at once. Or maybe I'm just not that skilled with that. But that's what works for me.
Yeah, it sounds really sensible. And I think a lot of things that you said sort of resonate with me. But it's funny, here in Australia, we're at this point of change with our own regulations, and our regulator has decided that exactly the things that you have said that I think are so sensible, by putting out your work to let patients see what it actually means tangibly. What does an earlobe filler potentially look like? And you might quote, we used 4 mils of filler in this face and 6 in this and 9 in this. Gives them some ballpark idea of what to expect before they come to you. But our regulators decided that that's not good because it's advertising drugs and many other sort of nuances. So I'm on both sides. I want patients to have some education. I want them to know what they're signing up for. But I'm also against a lot of what I see on Instagram where it's trivialized and made silly. And there's a lot of finger pointing of how terrible everyone else is and I'm the best injector. I think somehow our industry globally needs to somehow tighten up, and I don't know how to get that balance. What do you think, David? Because I know you're very obviously pro business, pro advertising, but also how do we get that balance?
You globally? Yeah. I mean, it's hard because we can't even get our shit together in one country at a time, and so I think globally it's difficult. But I think the fact that we've got open channels of communication now, like people now have got their own Patreons, they're building their own international communities and learning from each other, and we've got these open channels of communication. Yeah, I think, again, it just comes down to education and getting better people behind the needle. Yeah. Really, I think that if you get better ingredients, you're going to get a better outcome. So, I mean, if you put prerequisites in place for what people need to achieve academically and experience-wise before they can pick up a needle to inject cosmetic injectables. Yeah. And you train them consistently, and there's a formal training pathway, and it's standardized, and people need to demonstrate competency. And I think those are the sort of things that are going to lead to better outcomes and a safer industry and a more reputable industry and a more educated patient community.
Yeah, you've got a very successful and good following, April. So I know what your work's like. It is very natural and it's beautiful. And, I know your sort of tone of voice. But what do you think about some of the things that you see on Instagram? Like, do you think that's good for both patients in industry, or do you think there's a problem?
I mean, there's something for everyone, right? There's all different price
that's
points.
That's the way of putting
it. If they want the big old lips, then I can, send them to somebody, but it's not going to be me. But, different strokes for different folks. I don't know, but there is so much, I agree, so much trivialization where you're like, God, that is just embarrassing that, this is my industry. And, we've got people doing embarrassing things, and it cheapens it. It trivializes it. And it just, we're such a new specialty. Do we really want to do that now? This is the time we should really, be getting our shit together and, looking at, like there's CMAC in the UK and it's worldwide really. But I mean, I think that's great. Let's really take this seriously, ultrasound and safety and educating people and, not gatekeeping, as the kids say these days, just really getting it out there. So we all know, but then again, the injector has to want that. And I hear so many stories that, they're just kind of had their blinders on. They either don't know or don't care that there's education out there or that they can be better or there's different ways or better ways of doing things. They're just like, well, this is how I was trained and this is how I'm going to do it. And I don't want to learn anything new or whatever their MO is. I don't know. There's a lot of that apathy out there. And, until they are, wanting to be better, then you can't make them be better. Yeah.
I'm not going to point the finger at anyone specifically, but just a question for both of you. How would you feel if you saw your neurosurgeon doing a moonwalk on Instagram?
I actually think it's quite funny. I would actually quite like that personality, if I'm totally honest. Yeah, okay. But within the context of, this is a funny post, but all my other posts of me looking after brains. Yeah. There's a time and a place for having a laugh, and then I'm a neurosurgeon. Yeah. But if you're doing it whilst you're operating, now joking aside, you think that's ridiculous, April, but there was a big hoo-ha last year in Australia where some cosmetic surgeons were kind of dancing around filming themselves whilst operating. And that created a massive storm, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's been...
Oh, there was one here.
Yeah.
She lost her license. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
big consequences.
Crazy. But yeah, I agree. There's a time and a place. Like, you can be funny. I like it when people post funny stuff.
Yeah.
Or humor, or,
like Subio
is great with that. I mean, he's great with that. But, when you're really serious about, your art, your job, your craft, whatever, let's be really serious with it. You can still be funny, but, not dancing around or being flippant with it.
Here's something I'm not sure how I feel about, so I'm going to ask you. There's a thing at the moment about Kylie Jenner and catching a photo of some malar edema in bad light, and everyone's got their own opinion of how terrible it is, or how terrible the injector was, or how she's so rich that she shouldn't have that. How do you feel like that's helpful for our industry to nitpick these things on social media? I don't feel comfortable with it. I can't put my finger on why. I just don't.
Yeah. I mean, I feel a little skeevy talking about other people, My social media manager, she's like, oh, this Kylie Jenner thing. I'm like, oh God, no, it's all over Instagram. She's like, no, but for TikTok, it hasn't really been talked about on TikTok. So I filmed some stuff, and part of me was just like, it must be, and I said this on the recording, it must be really hard to be a celebrity in the public eye where you can't get by with anything. Yeah. I mean, she could have had some bad shellfish or something and had an allergic reaction. Everybody's like, oh my God, it's the filler, it's the whatever. I'm like, do you know? Yeah. Do you know what she had done? Are you her provider? Yeah. It's just so much speculation, and we really don't know. She could have just been swollen. She could have had a laser. Who knows? But, I mean, the thing that I don't appreciate is when you have celebrities who've obviously had plastic surgery and claim that they're natural. I think it sets the wrong tone. It sets the wrong expectations for women, young women, teenagers. Like, oh, well, why are they aging so nicely? Or how can they look like that and I look like normal? Yeah. I think when it's seemingly outright lying, I have a harder time with that. But I mean, I think Kylie Jenner has obviously had some stuff done, her lips or whatever, that she hasn't said anything about other than her lips. But yeah, to kind of pick people apart, it's like, I don't love that.
It's a bit cruel. What do you think about like all these sort of trends, like the fox eyes, the Brazilian butt lifts? I think Jake put something up the day, whole tox. I can't remember. That was in our private WhatsApp chat, so definitely wasn't on my Instagram. Right. Yeah, I mean, people getting their traps
and it wasn't my treatment, by the way.
What are people that want to like get their, like females that want to get their traps made smaller, or their calves or their necks, like the Barbie thing? What do you think about all those of trends? Do you does that sort of spark your interest at all? Or is this a no-go zone for April?
No. I mean, I do treat an occasional trap. I have a post on it, but I am super conservative. Below the neck is not really my area of expertise. I can do filler there, but tox there, I'm a little more conservative probably than most. I'll even refer out the migraine Botox to a neurologist. So I won't do that. But I'm just not one to jump on trends. I don't love the fox eye. I, don't love all the stuff because we know it's just going to go. And then, then what? Then how are we supposed to reverse this? Or, what are people going to look like after? And again, it's my patient population, very conservative for the most part. They're really just not into that. But, I do have some patients who carry a lot of tension in their traps, and we'll just do a little bit. It's not totally slim. It's not Barbie tox, but it just relieves their tension and feels so much better. So I'm all for that.
How do you explain to patients what beauty is? Because I ask it the other way around. A lot of patients come with a very specific thing. Like you said, like, oh, I've just got a thing here, doc, and they point to their marionette line. But aging is global, and it's all layers of the face and so on. So how do you explain to them what is going on and how what they maybe have preconceived is not the right solution?
Oh, it just goes back to educating. They see one thing and I'm like, well, let's talk about, why that's happening there. And I'll just get a mirror and I'll have them look at themselves and I'll just kind of point out the different areas or show them a diagram and then they kind of get it and then they understand. And I'm always telling my patients, I am here for restorative treatment. I'm not going to create you into something totally different. You're not going to look like a Bratz doll. You're going to look like you a couple years ago. And they kind of get that. They're like, oh, yeah, I like that. And then once you do the treatment and then they look in the mirror like, oh, now I understand. They just, they want to know, or they don't know the question to ask, that there's a difference between just restoring what they used to have as things are shifting and repositioning and, what they see on social media with the crazy Maleficent cheeks and things that aren't found in nature.
Yeah. So let's change gears. Let's talk about business a little bit, because you said that you were at a practice for a very long time, and then you sort of made the decision that you wanted to go out on your own. So, what was the impetus for that decision, and how did you go about transitioning from employee to being the boss, and the financial side of it, the risk, the not knowing how many patients were potentially going to come with you, navigating that really awkward conversation potentially with your ex-boss to say, hey, it's been great, but I'm out and I might be taking some of these patients with me, or they might follow me. Just walk us through that process and the thoughts behind it.
Over the years, I've had so many patients who, I see them so long that we develop a friendship, and we become kind of close. And several of them had said, if you ever leave, I will follow you anywhere. I will pay anything that you're charging. I will go anywhere you are. But if you leave, you need to tell me. So I got to thinking, not that that was the reason, but it was just one of those little things that adds up over time. And I just really wanted to have a little bit more control over my world that I'm operating in. I was with a pretty large dermatology group, and the larger an institution gets, the harder it is to enact change. And just some little things I would want to change, and it would be just kind of more difficult to do that. And I thought, well, my kids are getting a little bit older. They're a bit more self-sufficient. Everything else is pretty set up in my world, and this might be a good time to do it. And so I started exploring that, and, the stars aligned. God just kind of put it out there, and, everything just lined up the way it needed to be. And with the place, my medical director, I found a wonderful MA and other staff to support and help me. And it just came together. It was just one of those things that came together. And so, it was definitely an awkward conversation. It was very, very hard because I'd been there 18, years. It was really difficult. But I mean, I think we all have those difficult conversations at some point or another with, a trusted and respected, boss and colleague, where you have to say, this is my time. This is my time to do this. And, so it was awkward and it was hard, and I didn't want to step on any toes. So I didn't advertise other than, posting on my social media that, my last day is blah, but I didn't say where I was going. And, I didn't contact patients otherwise because I didn't want to step on any toes that way. But the beauty of social media is the majority of my patients follow me or have found me there. And so they just saw the post and, were able to schedule with me at the new place. So it was all pretty streamlined. And so that's been 10 months. But it was very scary. It's very scary because there's always that, fear right before I open. God, what if nobody follows me? What if they really didn't mean that when they said they would follow me anywhere, or maybe it's just good for them. But I mean, as soon as I announced it on Instagram, the phones blew up. Literally, my phone line went down because so many people were trying to call and get an appointment. And, just super thankful. It was just very overwhelming that it was like the sigh of relief. Okay, I think it's going to work. I think it's going to work.
How many patients do you think came across with you? Like, are we talking tens, 20s, hundreds? Like how many? I mean, it's 18 years, right? That's a long time.
Yeah, my electronic medical record says I have about 980 something patients in the chart right now.
And they all came from that practice that you were at?
And some of those are new. Yeah. Most of those are established, but I am still taking new patients. Okay. And so some of those are new that are new to me here. And I still will get, messages, oh my gosh, I need to see you in the new place. And, they're still kind of trickling in. And some of my older patients who aren't on social media, they've taken a little bit longer. They'll find that I have a website and they'll Google me and figure out how to find me, or their friend will tell them, or something like that.
So let's be conservative. Let's say you took 800 patients with you and those 180 in you. Would that be maybe a fair conservative estimation?
Of how many that followed me?
Yeah. If we say 800, you're saying you got 980 now. Would you reckon closer to 500? I'm just trying to get an idea about what that business lost when you left.
I would say of that, probably about 50 to 60 are new.
Wow.
So most of my patients were established. Yeah.
So 900 patients. Yeah. Okay. And they would see you probably at least twice a year?
At least.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I still do lasers. And so even if they don't need tox or fillers, we're doing their laser resurfacing or IPL.
As David does some maths here, I could see his business owner panic as you said how many patients left that business to come to your business.
And what's your average spend per patient, roughly?
My average what?
Spend. What does the average patient spend with you every time they come in, roughly?
Oh, for like an annual maintenance, 3,000 to 5,000
per visit. Oh, sorry, for over the year. And you see these people. Okay, right. So that's okay. So that's a lot of money, right? I'm not going to do the exact number, but that's a ton of money.
Yeah.
Right. So where I'm going with this is, what could this business have done to keep you if you had come to them and said, look, it's time for April to go and do the next chapter of her life. I'm sitting there as the owner of this dermatology clinic. I've just done the back of the envelope calculation and worked out I'm going to lose hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. What am I going to offer April to keep her? What would that conversation have looked like? April, we don't want you to leave. What can we do to keep you? Tell us. What do you want?
No, I know. I mean, they did. We definitely had that conversation. We had several of those conversations, but it wasn't the money. It really wasn't the money. I really just wanted to do exactly what I was doing in my space.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I wanted to have my universe where I could do that and see my patients in the way I wanted and not, I mean, there was some peripheral pressure to, conform or, do as the practice does because it's a practice. It's not a solo. So I understand that, but it was no longer a good fit for me. So it really wasn't the money. And it was kind of already capped out as much as they could at that point anyway. So,
and to be fair, 18 years is a pretty good innings. That's unheard of, to be honest, in most professions, in anything. Yeah. So I think, on your side, I totally understand you want the control and to do it as well, but also you gave it a good go.
Yeah.
It's not unreasonable to eventually want to change, right?
I guess where I'm going with this is, and this is a conversation that I've had with like a lot of my own private consulting clients who have their own businesses who potentially have superstar injectors like you in there, is like once it gets to the point where someone's decided that they want to move on and have their own autonomy in their own space, it's kind of too late. And so if this practice had come to you like 10 years ago in April, we love what you do. We never want you to leave. We want you to be a part owner in this business. We want to make you part of the decision-making process. We want to grow this pie with you and share it together. How do you think that conversation, I'm asking you to sort of go into the realm of the hypothetical, so I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to make a point for all those businesses out there that are listening to this who've just worked out how much money this dermatology clinic lost when you left. who go, I don't want to share my business with anyone, or I don't like the idea of like potentially bringing on partners into the business. If that conversation had happened 10 years ago, would you have been open to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to feel invested and valued and respected as a provider, for sure. Yeah, that would have a big impact. But you know, it's funny here. You don't have PAs in Australia, I don't believe. But you know, we've been around for 55 years almost, and you know, as healthcare and medicine's changing, our role is changing, and there's you know a lot of controversy with you know our role here. But in some specialties, we are kind of looked down on as not being able to practice the same type of medicine because our training wasn't as long. And you know, it's hard to get around that when some specialists that's all they hear, you know, and it's hard for them to think outside that box. And so I think in some specialties, that's going to be a harder road to travel because it's just kind of been ingrained over years and years. And so, you know, sadly, I think that's why a lot of injectors do want to do their own thing because, you know, maybe they're not respected or felt like they're valued or a good contributor to the practice. And they just feel like, well, we're just a workhorse and they don't really care if I'm here or not. I mean, I think at the end of the day, everybody just wants to feel valued and respected for what they contribute.
Yeah. Do you think I've made the point, Jake?
100%. No, totally.
I've been waiting for an example like this. To illustrate how important it is to like, don't take people for granted. If you have a superstar in your team, like in April, don't wait until they're telling you that it's over before you realize how much you want them and offer them the world. It's too late.
Yeah, 100%.
It's too late.
It's a very valid point.
Totally agree.
I don't know if this is true or not. Do you ever get any pushback from specialists or doctors that you shouldn't be injecting because you're not a doctor, or even nurses told that they shouldn't be injecting? Is there
they
that dynamic?
They don't say it to my face if they do. They don't tell me to my face.
Right.
I mean, I do get referrals from physicians and other non-physician injectors, and you know, for whatever reason, I guess they're not comfortable handling a patient. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure if there's, you know, probably people talking, but they just don't tell me. But I guess it's always better to be talked about, right?
Yeah. What do they say?
Means your name's still out there.
If what people say about you is not your business.
What people say about you is not your
That's
business.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
like, it's, you know, it's just irrelevant. What are you going to do? What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So what are the future plans for the business? Because it sounds like you've like kicking every metric out of the park with success. You've got like more than enough patients to know what to do with. What's left for you to achieve in terms of your own practice? Like, where do you want to go from here? You
know, I feel like this first year I'm getting my feet wet to see how this works, being, you know, quote unquote on my own. Right now I'm renting space from my medical director. And so I'm in his office. He's rarely here and I've got, you know, lots of room. And so it's a great situation. But eventually I'll probably want just to have my own place. I'm in a big, tall office building right now with parking garage and elevators and all that stuff. And, you know, if you're just coming in for Botox, you just want to go in, pop in and come out. You don't want to have to deal with all that. At least I wouldn't. So I'm thankful for my patients who do. But, you know, I just think maybe have something a little bit smaller, a little bit easier to navigate. You know, I'm in a great location right now for my patients and my home. And I'd like to stay around this area. So, you know, maybe starting to look for a place to lease that I could just set up as my own. Probably want to get a laser or two eventually, but, you know, really just kind of keep things as they are. I mean, I still love to go to my trainings and, you know, do the things, you know, travel and vacations and all that fun stuff, but really no major plans. I don't have plans to start a training academy. I don't have plans to, I don't know, what everybody else is doing these days. I'm not going to start a podcast. I just want to see my patients.
I was going to say, you know, almost full circle from you leaving someone's practice, eventually you're not going to want to inject all day forever. So maybe it is the logical conclusion that you do take on a mentee at some point for the long haul, not just to be a training school, but to have someone to inherit the business one day. So that could be something that
I've thought about that. Probably once I have my own place, that would make more sense. And, there's some other colleagues that I respect that would, fit in really well with, either here or wherever I wind up. So, that could be, but I don't have aspirations to have, 4 or 5 injectors working under me and have a, churning clinic. I mean, at least not right now. Ask me in 5 years, that may be different. But, right now I just, want to do what I do and, spend my time with my patients and, really just do the best that I can for them and continue to learn and grow and just kind of manage it that way so I don't get too overwhelmed. I learned early on to say no. Yeah. It's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes to everything. And then you're not as stressed out because you're not so overcommitted and overworked and unhappy. Yeah. Boundaries are good.
I'm pretty sure you do most treatments, but is there anything that you don't like doing or is off your menu? So do you do noses? Do you do lifting threads? Is there anything that you don't like doing or you've decided it's not for you?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of threads. I just have not seen amazing results that are worth the hand-holding and the downtime for me and for the patient. I have a couple of colleagues who are really good at them, but they've been doing them a long time. And, they've told me how hard it is to educate the patients and, weed out the ones who aren't good candidates. And it just sounded too much that I didn't want to take that on at this point. And again, I just don't see amazing results where I think, oh yeah, I got to do that. I do nose filler. I, trained with Ayad Harb in UK a couple of times now, and I'm a big fan of his technique. And so, I do nose filler. I do foreheads. I do temples. I do, pretty much everything. But that also comes with the comfort of learning back when we didn't know shit. And nose filler, sure, go ahead and stick some filler there. I think I heard a report that somebody went blind, but I'm sure I'll be fine. Yeah. It's just back then you just didn't know what you didn't know. And, you learn more, you get a little bit more cautious, but, I pretty much treat everything on the face and on the neck. And I do, non-surgical BBLs. I haven't done them in a long time, but, I do have some patients who want to do that, and hyperdilute radius for crepey skin, arms, knees, things like that.
Yeah.
So, in terms of the business side of what you do, like what CRM system do you use? How across your numbers are you? Do you sort of outsource all this stuff, or are you pretty across? Or maybe you're learning this stuff now. And that's something that, again, I talk to lots of people about is you need to understand your business. Yes, you're an injector, but now you're a business owner and there are certain things that you now need to be responsible for and you need to be cognizant of, especially as the industry becomes more competitive. So what's your sort of like education or competency around analyzing numbers and your CRM system and all the sort of back-end stuff that most injectors just detest getting involved in?
Yeah, I don't even know what a CRM system is. That's so bad.
Yeah.
So let me say my husband has an MBA.
Okay.
And we are co-owners in the MSO, the Management Service Organization.
Okay.
So he is the business brains.
Right.
Thank God. He's really, really good at all of that. He's, dealing with bookkeepers and tax attorneys and advisors and all of that. So he's doing that. I just run really the day-to-day stuff. And then we collaborate or I'll ask him questions on, purchases or, should we do this now? And he is strongly advising me not to get a laser at this point. So I'm like, I'll wait. I'll wait a little bit longer. Yeah. So that's how we are doing that right now. I'd say if I didn't have him, I would definitely have to hire somebody.
Yeah.
I joke that my brain thinks in medicine. It does not think in business. So everything else is business, even if it's accounting, it's business. It just goes in that bucket. So I don't really have a desire to learn it in depth. I'll definitely learn what I need to learn to be smart about operations and, how I run it. But I don't really want to get into that nitty gritty. I'm a firm believer in outsourcing if there's people that are better and smarter at it than I am.
Yeah. I guess the take home lesson is just don't ignore it. If you're not the person, get a husband with an MBA or get a business coach or someone, right?
Okay. Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't let it hanging out there because it'll bite you in the butt.
Yeah.
Talking about business decisions, so what's in your cupboard? What's your favorite brands? What have you tried? What don't you like? What's your favorite toxin? And, why have you made those decisions?
So I am carrying Botox, Dysport, and Daxi. I really like them all. And as I tell my patients, they're like, well, I don't know, which one should I use? And like, whatever one you think works best for you. But I'll be honest with you, most people can't tell the difference. So I just have more comfort level with those. I've been injecting them a long time. Well, except for Daxi, that's newer. But I just feel like they work and I'm very comfortable with them. So I brought those on. I have Allergan products. I'm carrying Skin Vive, Voluma, and Volux. Those are my 3 that I love. And then all of the Teoxane RHA products and many of the Galderma products. So, I do a lot of fillers. So I just like to keep them all stocked in there.
Yeah.
And Sculptra, Sculptra and Radief.
Yeah.
That's pretty much everything, isn't it?
So, you don't have to tell us the numbers, but you're carrying lots of volume of lots of different ranges. So how do you leverage the best price from the companies by not having that pure loyalty? Because that's often what it boils down to get the best price.
Right. Well, I'm definitely not top tier of anything any longer.
You're not black
but that's
gold
okay.
diamond?
Yeah. God, whatever that is. It drives me crazy with all these tiers and stuff.
Yeah.
But, that's the game they have to play, I guess. So, I think strictly from a volume perspective, I go through so much that I'm like tier something with a couple of them. So, that's worked out great. And then you get better pricing and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But, and I've got some great reps who are, very supportive and they want me to succeed and they're here to help me in any way that they can. And so that it's definitely helpful having, somebody on your side.
Yeah.
Again, another scary thing about going on your own. I'm like, well, I'm going to be paying top dollar for everything, but they've really come through. And a lot of it's just having those relationships, because I've known them before and they're still my reps even now. And, they want to see me succeed and definitely appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's move on to your Patreon because we sort of started before we went on there. We were talking about your Patreon a little bit and it's something you've just recently started. So I'm assuming this is potentially you wanting to give back or potentially look at other sources of revenue outside of injecting and getting more into the education side of things. So what was the reason behind starting it and what is it that you're teaching people?
The reason I started it is because I had like the 51st person that said, will you start a Patreon or do you have a Patreon? Where's your Patreon? I'm like, oh my God, I do not have time to do a Patreon. At my last practice, I was social media. I did everything from video editing to captions to pictures to before and afters, everything. I could do that then because I didn't have to deal with any of the other business stuff. But on my own here, I just don't have the bandwidth to do one more thing. And so I said, as soon as I go out on my own, I am hiring a social media person to help me because I can't do it. I can't do it all. So she's been a huge help with editing videos. She'll come up with some ideas for Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all of that stuff. But Patreon is pretty much mine, where I'm recording or, my MA or my social media person is recording the content, but then I'm posting it, and I'm writing a caption and, I'm answering questions. So that's all me. But yeah, definitely part of it was to give back because you can't film as in depth or post as in depth on Instagram. And then I'm also thinking, I don't really want to put how-tos on social media for anybody who buys a syringe of Foxy filler and inject their forehead at home. I don't really want to show people how to do that. So it made sense to take it offline and a more subscription service where people are invested. If they're going to do this, they're really invested.
Yeah.
And I'm showing everything. I'm going to post a nose filler. It's not very in depth, but I'm asking people, if you want to see this more in depth, I'll film a video of that. But I'll post it all. I'm going to post a forehead skin weave, jawline filler, facial assessment, hand filler, neck filler, just everything that I do that I think would be interesting.
Yeah.
That as a newer injector, I would want to learn, or even as an experienced injector, something new or different, or just seeing a different way to treat it or a different way to look at it. So that was really one of the main reasons, that I wanted to do it. And, just to get into almost teaching. It's like teaching or training, but not officially a trainer. It's different. I mean, Jake, when you're a trainer, you have to verbalize what's already in your head. I've never really had to do that. So I just look at somebody, I do my assessment in my head, I do my plan in my head, and I just start doing it. Mm. But when you have to verbalize it, it's a whole different mind shift, and it makes you think about it in a different way, and it makes you want to understand it in a different way. So I think it does make you a better injector when you have to explicitly verbalize it there. So that's been a nice little benefit too, is just getting to be a better trainer and understanding the why behind it.
Yeah, I actually think you'd be a great trainer. So we can talk. Maybe we'll do a thing one day. You can come to Australia and train our Aussies. But
oh my God, that'd be a dream.
Yeah, with Patreon, we've spoken about it to death about what it is, and we have our own Patreon. But how would you explain what it is for people who've never heard what Patreon is? It's a very American-centric platform. So some people are like, what the hell are you talking about? What's Patreon?
Yeah. And even when I present it to patients, like, well, do you mind if I record this for Patreon, which is, because they're like, what the heck is that? But, I'll just say it's an online learning platform for people to subscribe to. And then I'll just go into more detail. My subscribers are injectors who are interested in learning more. This isn't broadcast out in social media.
Yeah.
And I'm just giving more instruction about how and why I'm injecting. And then they kind of get it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah.
That's been a big thing for me. If I say to my patient, this is not going on social media, you're not going to be on Instagram. However, I'm going to be teaching some doctors and nurses, and this will be really valuable. They're like, oh, okay, then seems reasonable.
Yeah.
It's the fear of being in public where their friends can also see them having treatments that puts a lot of patients off consenting or saying yes. So yeah, it's worked really well.
Yeah.
My one issue one of my issues with Patreon is you can't easily ring fence who signs up. I mean, you can ask, you have to be an injector, and we actually ask them to fill out a form and we get some more information, but it's quite hard to ring fence that. Do you have any good tips for us?
Ring fence? I hadn't heard that term before.
Quarantine.
Okay,
Quarantine.
Like kind of roam.
But put a boundary around it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So I guess I haven't come up on that lately. I mean, I don't have a ton of subscribers. I've only been up for a few months now. But I would think my page wouldn't be very valuable or interesting to somebody who's not in the industry, because it really is just injections and lasers and a little social media. And I post some papers too. But I wouldn't think it would be super interesting. And I don't think anybody would want to pay a monthly fee for something they don't find that valuable.
Yeah. Fair point.
Yeah. And so what's the end goal with it? I mean, how big do you want to grow this? Is this something where you get it to a point where, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years, it'll become such a great source of income for you that maybe that's the time when you bring in another April 2.0 and you train them up?
You're such a great business guy. I mean, I wouldn't even have thought about that. I didn't think of an end goal. I'm like, well, I'm just going to do this and see where it goes and see if anybody finds value in it.
Yeah.
And, communicate with the patrons, I guess that's what they're called, patrons, and see what else they want.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually what I would like to do is offer a shadowing program. I get that question a lot. Do you offer shadowing? Do you offer training? And at this point I don't, but I mean, I think being a teacher on Patreon gets you better equipped so you can teach if you've got somebody there in your office with you and you're trying to explain that. So eventually I'll do that too, maybe this year, hopefully this year. But no, I really haven't thought about an end goal. I mean, I'll see where it goes and see.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Do you find that teaching people helps you understand things better yourself? Do you find that like when you get to the point of having to explain technical details on things or the concept or premise behind certain things that you're doing, that you go, yeah, that's why I'm doing it. That's cool. Yeah, like it actually it makes you better by teaching. And I know that's like a weird, it sort of seems counterintuitive, but do you find that?
Yeah, for sure. There's that saying, those who can't teach.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Yeah. But I don't feel like that's true in aesthetics.
Yeah.
I think the ones who are really good teach.
Yeah.
Because they're good at explaining it and they're also good at injecting. And I mean, what a benefit to our specialty is having somebody to share like that. But yeah, it definitely makes you think of the why behind, why am I putting my needle here? Yeah. Where's the ligament? Where's the vein? What vein? Where's the artery? It makes you really think about the reasoning behind it.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting when you think about the psychology of having to go through that mental process of why you're explaining something, and then something just clicks in your own mind where you go, yeah. And I think that applies to I think that applies to like any discipline really, whether it's injectables or you're teaching someone music or something. It's just like, I think you become a better practitioner or a better artist once you start having people that are, asking you on how something's done or why something's done. And I guess as well, you learn a lot from questions too, right? Sometimes someone might ask you something and you go, oh shit, I haven't thought about that before. Why am I doing that? What is the thought process behind that? Sometimes the uneducated mind or the person that's not, what's the word? They become almost conditioned, or they become so close to the subject matter that they lose objectivity. Whereas if you get someone that's kind of new to the craft, they kind of think outside the square. They haven't sort of been indoctrinated. Yeah. They kind of have a much freer mind to ask questions and think about things that maybe you haven't thought about.
That's why I enjoy actually have complete newbies, because I can't remember those questions that they have, but when they challenge you, but why did you put it exactly there? You have to justify it, otherwise what are you doing?
Yeah. So, otherwise I'll say, get off the stage, you schmuck.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing we wanted to share with our listeners, so April and us, we're going to share some Patreon content just to make it a bit more fun, and we can expose you to what April's doing, and April's followers can see what we're doing on our Patreon, and maybe you'd like to join both, who knows?
Yeah. And let us know whether you'd like more business content or inject content. I think
we'll do one each. I'll give a bit of inject content and you can do a business one.
Sure.
And then see what the people say. Now, April, you would have listened to our Injector Diaries before. We end with some sort of recurring questions, and we've done a spin for 2024 with some new questions. So how many vascular occlusions have you had?
Wow.
That you know of.
So I've had a lot. I have. I mean, it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, oh shit, that was a VO.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it. My first one, that was the worst one I had. It was when Radius first came out. Oof. And I occluded the infraorbital, probably the vein.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really, really scary. And fortunately, she turned out fine. But that really shook me because you can't dissolve it.
Yeah.
And I was somewhat of a newbie injector, and I had to kind of figure that out. And I thought, I got to learn more. I got to learn more about what I'm doing here. But I mean, some minor occlusions, some of them, you just see right away, you're like, nope, I'm just going to dissolve that. I've had a couple like in the nose where I'm doing nose filler. I'm like, I just don't like the way that looks. I'm just going to go ahead and dissolve it. Yeah. And it may not have been, it may have been fine, but I'm just so hyper cautious now that if anything looks somewhat questionable, I'll just go ahead and dissolve it if it's not looking better and looking worse. and maybe a handful over the years.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, before Jack moves on,
5 or 6.
how would you treat a vascular occlusion now with Radius as the product that you've used?
I would still do the same. I would do, well, at that time I used nitropace, which isn't really recommended anymore, but I would still flood it. There's some evidence that Hylenex may definitely alters the pH, but may thin it out, spread it out a little bit, better disperse the CAHA so it doesn't occlude or it frees up the occlusion. I definitely pull out my ultrasound and try to triangulate it. That's helpful. And hyperbaric.
Yeah, and pray. Whichever God you believe in, you're praying to that one. Yeah.
I mean, now I only use that hyperdilute, just a little extra.
Yeah.
Safety measure for me. Not that you can't occlude, but it just feels a little bit more comfortable for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Fair enough.
Carry on, Jake. Sorry.
You've sort of answered the question, but we'll probe it a little bit more. Excuse the pun.
Yes.
Do you use ultrasound? And if yes, which scanner have you chosen and why?
Yes. So I chose the Mindray after talking to a couple of very well-respected colleagues here who use it.
Yeah.
And showed me the differences in the screens and the price. But it is worth it. I mean, it's a really nice screen. It's a nice machine. I've done a couple of trainings, one more recently, and what I realize is that it's like learning a whole new language, and I just need to keep learning and practicing and scanning and getting better at it, because it is kind of like looking at, the static on the TV screen initially, but the more you do it, the better you get. But I do really like having it. It just gives me a little bit extra measure of safety, especially in high risk areas where, I can be sure that that vessel's not anywhere near where I'll have my needle.
Yeah. Mind Ray sounds like a weapon from Star Wars.
Yeah.
I know, right? They're really big in the whole ultrasound industry. They make machines for all different specialties, ER and ortho and all of that. Yeah. But they do make a really nice machine.
I just want to point out an observation, and I've sort of noticed this. I've gone back and started music learning. I played music when I was very young, and I got back into it when I sold my businesses a couple of years ago. And the thought process of having to learn how to read music and sort of going through that process of just actually recognizing that my ego as an adult was getting in the way of sucking at something and not knowing how to do it. And I think that's something that I think a lot of injectors are sort of struggling or grappling with when it comes to learning ultrasound. I think, the reason they say children learn things so quickly, they've got maybe potentially more neuroplasticity and their mind's not filled with other bullshit, so they can absorb information more easily, right? But I also think there's an ego, the adult ego in there that we kind of think if you're an adult, you shouldn't suck at anything. But if you think about how long it takes you to speak English, like we don't learn how to speak English for like 3 or 4 years, and some people still can't speak it, right? But I think that's just something to think about, is it's okay to be shit at something. It's okay to be a learner, even if you're like 20 years old or 50, 60 years old, it doesn't matter. So I think when it comes to learning ultrasound, like just check your ego. And I'm saying this again as a non-practitioner, but it's looking at it from someone that's had to try and learn a new skill again at the age of 40. Is like, don't be hard on yourself. Like, it's okay to be shit. But in the end, it's going to make you a better injector. It's going to make you safer.
Yeah.
And that's part of the journey of life. Like, don't stop learning.
Agreed.
And just because it's hard doesn't mean you can't do it. Sorry, I just wanted to throw that little inspirational chat in there.
Yeah. And, I'm no expert ultrasound. I don't know if you see yourself as an expert. I'm still learning. I'm still learning about Botox, let alone ultrasound. So we're all on a journey.
Yeah.
And sure, it is a bit of a mind scramble.
Yeah.
Because
a mind ray.
Yeah, a mind ray. Because, everything's just totally different. And you're seeing live anatomy, and what you maybe saw in the textbook doesn't quite match up, and so on. So it is different.
Yeah.
It is amazing. It's a really cool tool.
Yeah.
Next question. What's your favorite episode of IA ever?
This one.
And why? Yeah, apart from this one.
Yeah, this one. I really enjoyed Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed Arthur Swift. Those were some good ones.
Why did you enjoy them?
I like Nicola's.
Yeah.
Oh, just hearing the background and getting inside their head and understanding their thought processes, and then how they started. You know, I think we all want to know how people got in the industry, how they started, what motivated them. And, you know, I like that. Same reason I read biographies and things. You know, you want to learn more about people and what makes them tick.
That's how we communicate, is through story. That's how we roll. We like that stuff. So we've done a bit of a twist on the final questions that we do on these Injector Diary episodes for 2024. And we took this idea from Stephen Bartlett, who's the guy who started the Diary of a CEO podcast. So if you're listening, Stephen, thank you. I'm sure he's not, but if he is, thank you. So the last guest on our podcast has left a question for you.
On Injector Diaries.
On Injector Diaries. And her name's Kelly Beasy. She's a nurse practitioner from Brisbane here in Australia. And her question to you, not knowing who you were, just whoever's going to be the next guest, was, if you weren't an injector and weren't in the medical field, what would you do with your life? What would your career be?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. This is already like my second career, so I am not sure. I think I'd have to go back to college and figure it out.
What did you want to be as a little girl? What did you want to do?
A princess.
Oh, I had no idea. We didn't really think about that. It was like, yeah, you're going to go to college. We have no idea what you're going to do and haven't really talked to you about it, but you're going to go to college. Yeah, I mean, initially I thought I'd be a fashion merchandising buyer because, you know, I like shopping. But then you realize that's not really what it's about. And I'm like, I don't want to work retail. This sucks. And so that's how I got into this. I just kind of had to, you know, come to Jesus and, okay, we got to do something here. We got to do something with our lives. And so switch gears. But God, I hate to let her down, but I really have no idea. I wouldn't want to work in an office. I wouldn't want to be a teacher or anything like that.
Something arty, maybe?
Business somehow.
Oh, business.
I don't know, but I feel like I'm not creative.
Oh.
I feel like I'm not creative that way. I am with a needle and a syringe and faces, but I can't draw a picture or paint or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm the same. I can't. Literally, it looks like a 3-year-old drawing.
Career exploration or something. I don't know.
Fair enough.
We'll go with fashion retail buyer.
Yeah. Now,
God, yeah.
Finally, you need to leave a question for our next Injector Diaries guest. So what is your question for whoever it is? We don't know who it is yet.
What are you most proud of?
Good question.
Excellent. Like nice and simple, open-ended, could be anything. That's fantastic.
Fantastic.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
Well, April, that's been
Can't wait to hear it.
Really great to chat. I think we could have gone on for a few more hours. I'd like to pick your brain on many things, but hopefully we'll get to catch up one day in person and, go to a conference or whatever. Do you have any plans to travel this year and attend any of the meetings?
You know, I think my husband would kill me if I did another overseas, but I really want to go to Croatia in October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we may make that happen. And I am probably going to try to go to Suvio's needle art in fall. I've heard great things about it, so I might do that. Other than that, I'm not sure. We'll see.
Maybe Australia one day.
Yeah, one day.
Love to.
We'll get
bucket list for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'll find you.
Then I'm gonna have to stay for like a month. You know? It takes.
You have to stay for a month. Then.
Yeah. Well, I'll find you a kangaroo and a koala.
Here's an idea. I don't think anyone's put this forward before. Maybe we'll do a Patreon conference of some description, like a get together of all the superstar Patreon providers. That would be cool.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That could be really good.
Because then we share the load and we give totally different angles on things.
Interesting concept.
There you go.
We'll workshop that.
That would be good.
Yeah. Anyway, if you're a Patreon provider or content provider, reach out and let us know if you're actually interested. I just thought of that. There's no planning behind that.
On the fly. On the fly.
Awesome, April. Well, great to speak and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloan and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.